Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch and see what comes out of my face.
Each other. Last time we were all together as a family was at the family barbecue, and it was not a fun day.
Look who's back.
Wait, so is Charlie going to be in this session? Because now, as a family therapist, and there are various different styles and models of family therapy, but for me, I prefer to have everyone there in the first session, like even people that the family didn't think were relevant, because often they were relevant. And so if that meant 15 people, it meant 15 people. And that's another problem with being a marriage and family therapist, is that you have to have a giant office, or at least access to a giant office, because to have the capability to have a session with 15 people, you need a large room with 16 chairs or enough seating for that. That's hard to do. So that's another kind of pain in the butt aspect to being a marriage and family therapist. Also, if you're a family therapist, you're often working with kids, so you need to have things that kids can play with, toys, coloring books, this kind of stuff, and often enough floor space to get on the ground and play with Lego and that kind of stuff, which was also a big pro, because to play Lego with kids, I sometimes half hour into the session, I suddenly realized that I'm just enjoying myself playing Lego, and I forgot that I was a therapist. So anyway, which is fine, by the way, and there's a whole topic of working with kids and what you're supposed to do there. But anyway, so that's what I would do with families, and then I would very typically would start narrowing things down and work with different subsections of the family, and then periodically bring everyone back. The reason why I did this is because two reasons. One is I wanted everyone to know that I wanted everyone to start on the same foot, because if I only met with a couple people and then I needed to invite other people, like if you met with Libby and Chuck and Andrei, and then they invited Charlie and Jen and the others to the second session, the others would feel at a disadvantage, even though they're not. It's because as a family therapist, I'm able to manage the fact that I've already sort of bonded with a couple people. I'm not going to just, be against other people. And as the other people are complaining, I'm not completely believing everything they're saying, or I'm just taking it with a grain of salt. It's just one side of the story. So, but I don't want clients to come into the office already on at least that defensiveness with me. I want everyone to be there in the beginning to feel like they all had a chance to start off with me on equal footing. Another reason is that I want everyone to feel as though they are a client, because it makes it easier for them to show up. Because one of the problems often, especially in situations like this, is that you'll have resistant family members that will say like, well, I don't want to go to family therapy. Imagine if Chuck doesn't show, or if Charlie doesn't show up. He's a key member in this whole thing, and for him not to be there, it would really limit what you could do as a family therapist. The other thing is that it just sort of establishes the notion that the family is the issue. It's not Andrei, it's not Charlie, it's the family. And so when everyone shows up, you're modeling as a therapist that that's your focus. And it starts things in the right direction, you know what I mean? So also, everyone needs to sign the consent form. Everyone needs to be explained the same things about confidentiality. So it's important, and it's a style of family therapy that is similar to Whitaker and Satir and others. Other family therapists will do it differently, because I train a lot of family therapists, and a lot of times novice family therapists or family therapists who have lost their way, in my opinion, will stop doing that, stop having everyone in the first session. And another reason why you want everyone in the first session is it's kind of a litmus test for who's actually willing to come to therapy, because sometimes I would get a call from, say, the Libby individual, and they say, I want family therapy. And if I allowed only Libby to show up, and I assumed that everyone else would show up, and then I go, okay, session 2, bring everyone in, and no one else comes in, then it wasn't really family therapy to begin with. So sort of a litmus test of like, who's actually willing to come? Yeah, I need to know that from the beginning so that I can assess the situation. Anyway, so what scared family therapists will do, and there's different models of family, like Bowenian family therapy, you tend to only meet with the most differentiated member, which is fine. That's a good model, and I've done that before too. But the reason why family therapists will kind of lose their way and not invite everyone into the session, at least eventually, is because it's extremely intimidating. I mean, to have 15 people who are yelling at each other and all of them are skeptical of you as a therapist, and you have to somehow prove yourself to everyone to get them to come to the second session. And you're in private practice and you kind of need the clients because you need the income, because you're self-employed. It's scary. So it's so much easier to avoid. It's so much easier to avoid and just say like, well, I'll just meet with a couple people and, it's too big, or, Charlie, he won't want to come, or he's such a problem. There's no sense in working with him. You'll hear therapists say all these various different things, but what I consider to be pure family therapists, they not only have the attitude of, no, everyone has to, in fact, for me, what I would tell people is like, okay, who's involved? Like, and they would inevitably bring up Charlie, and I would say, I'm not working with you as a client if Charlie doesn't show up to the first session, because sometimes you really have to be adamant about it. Because sometimes they'll agree to have everyone come, but then half of the people won't be there because they'll just show up at my door and be like, oh yeah, Charlie couldn't make it because he had to work or something. I'll be like, ugh. And so it just really, hinders me, hamstrings me to not have the main scapegoat, the main player in the scapegoating of Andrei in the room, perhaps the main holder of a lot of the symptoms of the family. That's the mindset of family therapists, systemic therapists, is that Charlie has individual issues, but he also might be taking on issues for the sake of the family for various different reasons. But without him there, so I would say, and occasionally, and I would really be clear to them on the phone. It's just like, so I just want to reiterate, if everyone isn't there for that first session, I will turn you away and tell you to reschedule when everyone can come, because I can't help you if everyone doesn't show up to the first session, and I want to start everything out right. Occasionally, they would still show up, and I would have to turn them away. I wouldn't always do that, but sometimes I would. So, is Charlie going to be there?
All the cops.
Like I said,
Don't tell me what to do. This is the greeting I get?
well, you're not running the place anymore, man. You're not.
I was talking earlier about the glory of having all the family members or the couple in the room, and how you could facilitate love and connection and understanding of vulnerability and crying and hugging. There's a flip side, which is that actual violence can happen in the room. That, it wouldn't be incredibly odd. It would be, because usually people know not to get into a physical fight in a therapy office, but people can get close, and that's the sort of other side to it. Now, on one hand, you'd be like, oh, I'm failing as a family therapist, but often the approach, the mindset is that it's great to witness it, right? You can hear about, imagine you hear about this fight. That's one visualization, plus it's through everyone's eyes and their lens. But imagine if you actually observed the intensity of the conflict in your office. It's a wonderful opportunity to assess firsthand what's happening. And a lot of novice family therapists will think that they're failing if there's any kind of conflict happening in their office, but that's not the perspective I recommend. The perspective I recommend is that, look, they're fighting 10 times worse outside of your office. So the fact that they're fighting in your office, it's not new to them. It's not a good thing, but it's not like it's the only time that it happens. And certainly as a therapist, you're not responsible for manipulating people away from their normal pattern of conflict. So use that opportunity as a moment where you can actually fully observe and fully feel, and then not only the two people fighting, but how does everyone else react to the fighting. It's very informative. So, but it's a risk, and you have to be ready for it as a family therapist. And I found this to be something I discovered fairly early, to the point where, and I was a sort of family therapist where I actually would want that to happen. I mean, I wouldn't try to get them to fight, but I wanted there to be real communication, and I also wasn't afraid if they started to fight, to the point where when I was at my agency, that with other therapists and other folks, they actually thought my clients were so loud in session that they moved me to an outbuilding so that my clients could be loud and they wouldn't bother other people. And I felt bad, but I also, to the noise disruption, but I also took some pride in the fact that I was so, because I considered it to be an effectiveness marker that I could, create a scenario where families and couples could actually communicate in an authentic way. Because that's another side, and I'll stop yammering in a second, but that there's a worry that and a problem where clients will show up and they'll be extremely buttoned up and they won't act normal. And they'll say all these nice things because they're trying not to step out of line, and they're trying to be a good client. And that's not ideal because you're not going to get an opportunity to witness the real issue. And the clients are, as soon as they leave the office, they're going to be back in their normal mindset. You want them to be in their normal mindset, which was another reason why with a lot of my family clients, I did in-home therapy. I would actually go to the house for a variety of reasons. And one of the benefits is that they're more likely to be themselves. You also get to witness the environment. If they have like 15 dogs that are causing all sorts of chaos, which would happen sometimes, then that's another piece of the assessment that is, useful to find. Anyway, let's watch.
No.
I am worried.
Yeah, when the producers of the TV show are getting involved to stop people from really hurting each other, you know that it's serious. Now, who knows? Maybe it was all faked, but it certainly didn't look that way. And the fact that the family completely rejected Charlie for a number of months after that, shows that, and again, they could be faking that, but I don't know. It seemed real, right? It seemed real. Yeah, so if I was to take a guess, I would say that the family, given what we've seen, has legit issues that go back before even the kids were born, in all likelihood. And there has to be some mindfulness by the family members that they're being filmed. So I'm guessing that it's not completely authentic, but I'm guessing it's very close, seemingly,
Worried for my husband and my brother. I don't want them to get into a physical altercation again. Here we go. I hope that the therapist is ready for us. That's all I'm really thinking about.
Yeah, well, I hope so too. Most family therapists have enough experience to handle, and again, I was saying earlier, it requires a lot of skill, a lot of artfulness, a lot of confidence. Often as in therapy programs, we're trained as therapists to be very good listeners, which is great. But there's another skill, particularly as a family therapist, particularly with couples and families that are fighting a lot, that you have to be commanding of the session. There's a lot of debate, a lot of nuances to this, of course, and approaches, and there's a wide variety of what would be considered helpful given different moments of this. But I found that I had to be much more active as a couple and family therapist, particularly in the first number of sessions, because if I didn't, things would just spin out of control and the client would never want to come back because things went so poorly. So I had to be able to corral people, to potentially route them in a direction, stop them from fighting, or reroute the fighting or something, and command a room. It's very different when you're working with just one client. You're just having a one-on-one conversation. Each person, each of you are just focusing on one person. The client's focusing on you and you're focusing on them. As soon as you start involving a lot of people, particularly like 15 clients, like everything's just going every which way and and you can't monitor it all. You can't monitor every single person and their mood. And so you have to be a strong leader is the thing. And that shifts over time as the sessions progress, as hopefully you've created some sense of safety and routine and calmness in the session, differentiation. And also, if you establish control and leadership, then it doesn't take much to actually, reroute the therapy. Like one of the things that I found that I would do with families, and of course I don't necessarily recommend this for all therapists, and I didn't do this with all clients, but I'd be working with a couple or family, and because I, with these particular clients that I'm thinking of, had established myself as a leader and as someone that they could trust, that when they started to go off the rails, I would actually tap their foot with my foot, because we're sitting pretty close to each other, right? So I'd be like, hey, and I tap their foot. Or I might even reach across and sort of, tap their shin or something like, hey. And it sounds bad when I say it out loud, but in the moment, it worked. And I would ask the clients, is it okay I'm doing that? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So if I detected some kind of trauma around that, obviously I wouldn't do that, or discomfort around it. But it, You don't find that in a book when you're learning about how to be a therapist. There's no chapter that says like, okay, when do you kick your client in the foot? It's an art form. It's experience. You learn on the job. You figure out how your personality interacts. That's another thing about being a couple and family therapist is often your own personality almost has to be involved because of that. If, you could be an individual therapist and your personality can also be very involved, but it doesn't have to be because there's much less need for you to kind of put yourself out there. The other thing, and I'll stop yammering so much, is that the countertransference that I've experienced with couple and family therapy is 10 times more intense than it is on average with individual clients, meaning the amount of emotion and the amount of loss of perspective that I will have in the middle of a session. It just makes sense. There's so much more chaos. There's so much more me being pulled in various different directions. And the amount of feelings that I'll have, both positive and negative, is just so much more likely to be, 10 times more intense. And you start to lose perspective. You start to feel like you're part of the family as a family member instead of a therapist that is sort of a part of the family, but not entirely. So it's extremely difficult work. and to the point where with a lot of couples and families, I found myself really ruminating on them, after coming home from work. And that's a common outcome of working with couples and families. But as I was saying earlier, as a therapist that either intrigues you and gives you, motivation to like really try to master this form, or you have tremendous dread around that and you never want to do any of that kind of work. And so, you just have to figure that out for yourself. Okay, so I don't think we've met Walter yet, right? We've met Pamela, but okay, so mom and stepfather. Great. I mean, if the two of them are there, then I'm guessing that a lot of the people are going to be there. That's great. Of course, Chuck, that's great that he's there, but that would be expected. I think he's the main, I don't know, but the way it's portrayed on the show, I think he is the main person in the family that's trying to keep everything together, the person who puts himself in the back burner to please everyone around him. Okay, and that must be the therapist, Jean Malloy.
Hi, I'm Sheila.
All right, so just looking up her resume, or at least as it's very briefly listed on her website, she has a PhD. So they should have said Dr. Jean Malloy, by the way. And she has a PhD in clinical psychology, so she must be a psychologist who also works with families. It's rare, but some psychologists are trained and do also work with families. And yeah, so she has a PhD from Fordham University in New York City. According to Psychology Today, she's been in practice for 26 years. She graduated in 94, which is around the time I graduated in 97. And so she's 26 years, so maybe she took a couple years off, or this website hasn't been updated or something. She charges, according to the website, in case you're interested, $150 plus per session. And it seems like she works with a wide variety of clients, including working with families.
Nice
Hello.
to meet you. Glad you're here.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Jean.
How's it going, Chuck?
Hey, what's up?
I guess I'm sitting there.
So you're wearing a really nice shirt.
You guys are almost twins.
We are twins. It's the same shirt.
Okay, so I'll probably be pausing a lot because I don't get a chance to talk about this very often, hardly ever really, to evaluate or talk about family sessions. So one of the traditions in family therapy, and not every family therapist adheres to this, but one of the strong traditions of family therapy is to think about where everyone sits, because the therapist set up a number of chairs in a horseshoe or a semicircle, and people could sit wherever they want to. So why did now? It wouldn't take a genius to wonder as to why Chuck didn't sit next to Pamela and her husband. You could imagine, but he didn't sit really far away, but he sat close enough. The other thing to notice, and you can't read into everything. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but Chuck did sit right in the middle. I think that reflects his role. Maybe he's thinking subconsciously or consciously, well, if I'm in the middle, I can manage everyone and I can try to please everyone. Pamela is pretty far off to the side. And then when Andrei and Libby sat down, Andrei sat right next to Chuck. So as a therapist, it would be just a data point. You don't know if it means anything, but you're always assessing, particularly in that first session, right? So you might conclude, oh, okay, well, maybe, and the fact that the mom, Pamela, said, you're twins, and the two of them kind of smiled at that, yeah, we're twins, that they might have an alliance, that they might have a bond.
So you're wearing a really nice shirt.
You guys are almost twins.
We are twins. It's the same shirt.
Did you plan that?
Yeah, definitely.
So walking into the therapy session room, I noticed that Chuck has the same shirt as me. I didn't know that he's gonna wear the same shirt. I think wearing the same shirt, me and Chuck, tells that we are on the same side.
Yeah, I mean, this is Andrei talking after the session, so he's just reflecting on that. But yeah, it sounds like they didn't plan that. They're just joking that they did, and that would be an assessment element. Okay, so it also looks like that's the end of the seating arrangement. So that would be another thing to think about. It's like, well, if Andrei wanted to sit next to Chuck, why didn't he sit in the middle seats between Chuck and Pamela? Again, we know a lot more, I assume, than the therapist. So, but sometimes I wonder if the therapist will, at the very least, watch the show and prep for the session. Some therapists would actually consider that to be a problem clinically because it could affect your, poison the well, so to speak, of the first session, because you want to have a clean slate upon which you can actually assess what's really happening. Some therapists would actually even consider it to be unethical because the clients might not want you to watch the reality TV show before. They want a fair shake or a clean slate when they walk in. So if you ever did that as a therapist, you would do well by actually informing the clients. So do you want me to watch the show? Because I know you're on a show. Do you want me to watch it or not? But then it'd be hard to coordinate all the opinions of everyone. So often I think therapists would just opt to not do it at all because of course it's not required. So, but I would ask, it's just, I don't know if I would have before, but given all the work that I've done on this YouTube channel, I would, not all the time, but I probably would ask the family, so I know that you're on a reality TV show and I just wanted to ask if you actually wanted me to watch it or not. I don't know if I will, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Does anyone have opinions about that? If one person said, I would rather have you not watch it, then I wouldn't watch it because I don't want to alienate one person. But if they all said either like they're neutral or they wanted me to watch, then I would consider it. I would charge for it because every hour, should be charged. So, it's research, right? It's essentially just assessment time. Okay, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.